Welcome, everyone. And for this live stream, it's all about brand story, franchise sales. I don't know, we got feedback there. Brand story, franchise sales, and really getting you into the marketplace the right way. If you're a new franchisor, how do you enter the marketplace the right way with your positioning and franchise sales process? And if you're an existing franchisor, how to audit what you're doing now, look for the gaps you're missing, and really build a unique pathway. And I think in the franchise world, and everyone's talking about brand story, everyone's talking about content, everyone's talking about syndication, but we all need to be careful because there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of form over substance. And so today, with no one better, Kelley Rosequist, we're going to talk about brand story, Kelley's experiences as a franchisor. Kelley, so welcome, and we'll have some
Thank
fun
you.
today.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
You know, Kelley, we just finished our Fran Camp conference a couple of weeks ago in Chicago, and we were talking about brand story. And it was interesting to me that as a business owner and even franchisors, it's something you need to struggle with. And I think there's a point where you just unlock, what is that genuine story? Because we heard so many stories where it was really moving. So, I think to start, Kelley, from your perspective as a founder, and not your knowledge now, but way back when you started your franchise system, did any of this have any meaning to you in terms of brand story and the things we're talking about right now?
It didn't. No, I mean, I never even thought I would have had time to consider such a thing. But if I had considered it, which I think we all are thinking about what is our brand, what are we selling, I can say I was way off the map on what my actual brand story was when we first got started.
So for everyone listening, right, because we all have a blind spot when it comes to our own business. We'll look at our website, we'll sort of know what's there. We could even read things in our materials, and we're reading it, but we're not processing it. What are, for you as a franchisor, like, where does brand story fold in from a practical standpoint, and how should everyone think about it?
So, I think it's something that needs to be evaluated really early on and deeply evaluated because it should build out your entire process. I can say for myself, when I first got started, I thought our brand story was our product. I thought the service and product we were providing to the consumer directly, that was our story. And so we built a lot of things around that. When, at the end of the day, that wasn't the story we should be telling. And, we lost a lot of opportunities to stand out in the marketplace because that's the only story we were telling.
I think, I think that's the first gap, or not mistake, that we all fall into. And we see this with new franchisors when they're talking about the brand and franchise sales, they're talking about the product or service, right? And then when we see the more established franchisors that are really in sync, they're talking more about the franchisee experience, the franchisee transformation, how we help you do it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I like to use example. One of my favorite brands is a coffee brand. And, you see a lot of coffee brands when they're first starting, coffee shops, restaurants, you'll go to their Fran Dev page and it's something like drink coffee and make money doing it, right? Like as if people are buying these brands because they just want to drink coffee. Which, maybe that's what got them interested. But then you look at brands that you can tell have really dove into what they're doing. And one of my favorite brands is called Biddy and Bose. And for those who don't know what they are, they're a coffee franchise as well. And they employ individuals with developmental disabilities in their communities. That's sort of their whole model. And you go to their Fran Dev page, I'm on it now because it's one of my favorites. And, their tagline is a human rights movement disguised as a coffee shop. And I think, that's totally, that is a brand story. It's not just about coffee. Coffee's the vessel to tell that story, or the product placement of that story. But I think, in the beginning, a lot of us have a hard time figuring out, what's the story our brand is trying to tell.
And when we're thinking, Not that there's a formula, because it does need to be genuine. When we're speaking with clients and we're looking at websites, or out of frustration where we see a franchise brand spent significant money, spent money on PR, spent money on marketing, but didn't get leads, and they're asking for advice. And it's like, you started spending the money, but you didn't solidify the why you and that brand story. And when we get to the website, we see exactly those things, right? Uh,
Mhm.
the franchise sales webpage is really just re-describing the product or service. Um, and then we'll see, again, more story around how great the product or service is. And then we'll typically see the generics in the franchise world, which for me look like, if I talk about uniques, we'll typically see as generics: training, support,
Right.
um, maybe some technology, if we're, and then, the 5, 6, 7 steps to becoming a franchisee. And I think that's where the lost opportunity comes in. With the biggest item being lost time and lost opportunity. Franchisors feel like this marketing didn't work or this paid ad didn't work. And probably the reality is they weren't ready to start spending those dollars.
I agree. I mean, I think to your point earlier, Charles, that most brands don't know what they don't know about themselves. And I think that's why it's so important that you have some sort of collaboration with someone outside of your brand. Good Spark and Fran Camp has done a really good job. An example of creating this amazing masterclass that helps people tell their brand story. And, every once in a while we'll have clients submit their master classes to us, and their answers, we're trying to prompt these like deep thoughts, and the answers will be one or two things. Like, we offer great training, right? Like and there's nothing wrong with that. I would have answered it the exact same way
Mhm.
10 years ago. But unless you have someone prompting, like, let's dive deeper, let's talk more about that, or someone just saying, actually, that's not that special. A lot of people do that. But of course it feels special. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the franchise space that will tell you it's special, and that's what you should be selling, and that's what you should be promoting. It's important. Having great training, having, great systems is important, but it's not that unique. If there's probably something really unique about the way they train, or about their systems, or about the engagement in their training. And that's what they should be highlighting, not just the training itself.
Which, right, everyone gets stuck. They're like, because sometimes even brands will say, well, there's nothing different from our competition, right? Or they're answering in a way as if it's not. And I think it's in the detail, who you are at the founder level, what created that motivation to create the business, how has the business transformed their lives. And then really for the emerging brands, as a founder, really being an avatar for those franchisee candidates where they could validate through you and share. So Kelley, you've seen, because we have our workshops with our clients, and it's designed, I think the biggest goal there is designed to help them unlock their story and let them feel like let's not hold back. What are some examples of where they get stuck, and and where they should be in terms of thought process and content?
So I think the two biggest places I see people get stuck, one are in brand differentiators. And what you said, like, people fall in this hole of like, well, we are a donut shop. There's a million donut shops. We're not that different. And it can feel like that, especially when you've been running the business for a long time. It's kind of easy to get into that rut. But I guarantee you there's something exceptional about what you're doing, but sometimes you need someone outside to help you unlock what that is. And I think the other one I see pretty regularly is core values. People will generally have some very generic core values. That's one of the questions we ask. What are your top 5 core values of your company? And they're usually all the same. Be kind, be courteous, be empathetic, treat customers with respect. And they're these very generic terms that sound good, but aren't actually actionable. Where maybe they're, be kind is greet every customer with a smile. Remember every customer's name and say goodbye in their name every time. Like, there's their values, those things that set them apart are actually way more detailed than the label that they're giving them.
Kelly, and back to your original point where we do see, especially on the startup phase, franchisors focusing on their product service versus their new product service, which is being a franchisor and what we're delivering. From a franchise buyer perspective, what should franchisors be focused on? How, like, if you were guiding them on, here's how can they separate what they want to say to franchise buyers versus the information franchise buyers really want to hear or learn about?
I think that that's an important deep dive that a lot of people don't have that we should have too, is who is your audience? Because depending on who your audience is, you're going to deliver a different message and a different brand story. If my audience is huge investors who want to gobble up a big part of the market, I'm going to come out strong with numbers and facts and ROI and all of these things, right? That's an important part of my brand story, actually. Like, we're a company to invest in. That's part of our brand story. But going back to maybe a coffee concept again, if my audience is millennials or Gen Zers, maybe it's not about the cup. Maybe it's about, coffee. Maybe it's about closing the cultural gap and having people experience coffee from all over the world, or, so it's like, how do you tell that story that's going to capture the right audience? And for most people, it's the experience, not the product. And so how do we make sure to get that experience across of what it means to be a franchisee with our brand? Because that's often a different experience than the consumer is going to have. So I think that's where a lot of people get trapped too, is they're still selling to the end user and not selling to the franchisee.
And we see that often, Kelly. I'm going to share. I'll share this. I was just Googling franchise sales website. And so this is a large national brand, right? And so let's do a deep dive here, because I think there's a lot we can uncover. And Smoothie King, so this is again, they're not a client, and I just randomly opened this, right? This is the Smoothie King franchise sales webpage. So right out of the gate, again, we're dealing with a national brand with hundreds of locations. So they're not a startup or emerging franchisor. So there's no deep dive founder story here, right? Completely different positioning. But they're out of the gate. See what's blending at Smoothie King. Welcome to your one-stop shop. Fresh franchise opportunities. Become a Smoothie King owner today. Get started. And I'm assuming there's a form to fill out. On that headline itself, I mean, if I were critiquing it, I mean, they're just relying on legacy and that people know what Smoothie King is. And if this to me would be a sign that if you're a startup or emerging franchisor, this is not the type of headline you'd want to see on your website. How do you feel about that, Kelly?
I feel the same. I mean, there's definitely not a story here. I also noticed there's not a single consumer in this video. It's all just smoothies. So.
Right. So, I mean, right. And I think another good test is, can you take the headline and that initial copy and replace another brand's name, and it works the same way, right? So you could take all of their competitors and it's almost homogenized, right, as a brand story. I think when we're seeing for the emerging brands, I think the key here is really speak to that transformation of your franchise buyer, which is, if I'm a mobile children's education or supplemental income business, and I'm positioned as supplemental income, and I want to achieve a greater good, like educating or teaching, then my headline's going to be focused on that work-life balance, supplemental income, and greater good.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe the founder video there talking about that mission and how the business changed their lives. Let's see, Kelly, if we go down more, this one bothers me, and this is a go-to for everyone. So their second most important website space is join a booming industry. So they're telling you to join a $480 billion industry. How do you feel about that, Kelly?
I mean, what I read here is join a super competitive industry.
Yes. All right.
For the best.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. I think that's exactly the right decoding there. That's for sure. Oh, wow. Yeah. More on a superficial level for me. this to me is a signal that they're concerned about their own numbers in theory, because like, I don't care about the industry numbers. I want to know about your numbers.
Right.
And I think when these agencies and other stuff or franchise development companies, we'll see these, you'll see it, new franchisors, and it's not talking about their own unit economics. It's talking about join like a $50 billion pizza industry or so. All right, we both agree this is just masking something, correct?
Yes.
All right, let's go to the next part. I love that. Kelly, I didn't think of it that way. You're right. It is that's a great way to look at that. Okay, so now why franchise? Probably the most important thing, right?
Mhm.
And I think we agree, like that's an important question everyone needs to answer, right? What do you think about this, Kelly, here?
I mean, the numbers look strong. I mean, you don't really know what that means because you don't know what your expenses or anything are there, but okay.
Yeah,
You know, the 1,200 plus locations again is pretty intimidating. I mean, how much space could possibly still be available?
right. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I guess they're saying the 1,200 because the average. I think a good takeaway here is number one, I agree with you. It's not clear what this exactly means. I guess they're telling franchise buyers, look at our gross sales, not. But if for everyone watching this, I think the why Smoothie King or why first of all, I wouldn't use the term why franchise with. It seems so artificial, or why own a blank, or how Smoothie King can transform your life, or what it's like to, right? It's just, again, it's like some marketing department said why franchise. Weird. But that's an important question we all have to answer. And I think for franchisors, you need to know your positioning and your promise, right? Are you an income replacement, supplemental income, or whatnot, that economic opportunity? But then I think deeper is, I think it's important to address the KPIs, right? Which is, so for me, three uniques or three why components really deal with founder and founder motivation and knowing that team will support me, how you help me do it, right? Tech stack, other, and what are the numbers? So I think it's important to have numbers. And then, of course, the big question, and to your point, if I know the gross sales, what does that mean about my profitability? Which we certainly don't know here, right? Um, and Smoothie King wouldn't be unique to that. Blending up benefits. What do you think, Kelly?
I mean, I don't think it's very unique.
Right?
None of these are very unique.
What's interesting, right? So join a brand committed to promoting health and wellness. I mean, that seems so flat. And to our point about brand story, there's nothing genuine, right? Are there franchisees talking about the transformation their customers have, or there's information about their nutrition or something special? I mean, it's just a generic throwaway, it looks like. Experience the benefits and support of private ownership by a former franchisee. What do you think there?
I don't even know what that means.
Isn't it? But what's crazy to me is, right. So, and we see this too, where brands will be operating for 2 years. And again, we're all in the same boat. This happens. And, it's a fresh perspective. And sometimes all these generic things. I'm assuming, I know nothing about Smoothie King, right? In terms of internal corporate, I'm assuming they were either equity owned or something owned, and a group either run by a former franchisee bought the company, which I guess the former franchisee is trying, they're trying to say, I'm like you, management is like you, but that's like uncovering a ton of other issues, which is
Right.
what caused all this problem. And oh, so you're saying it was a problem before that. So there's a lot of confusion here. But I'm thinking, if I'm the former franchisee or the marketing agency that wants to talk about this, then maybe that former franchisee executive should say, we bought the company because of this. I believed in this, and this is what we're focused on, right? And
Yeah.
then that gets to a new founder type story.
I
And then invest in business, been tested and perfected for over 50 years. W-
Has Smoothie King been open 50 years or just smoothie businesses?
I, Kelly, I don't know. That's a good insight there too. And even if it is like to your point, I love the counter narrative. Does that mean it's dated? And if it's so proven, where are the rest of the numbers?
Right.
And I don't even know, I don't even know what I'm going to be operating. Is this manager operated full-time operation? How, like, they're not talking about how they help me operate or the competitive advantage to their blenders and their marketing programs. And I think that's an important takeaway. These blending up benefits, other than the fun headline, it's all generics, right? And I guess that's what we're trying to avoid for everyone watching this.
The last one is the only one with a little bit of detail, but it's almost oddly too specific.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree. It is too specific. Well, so then if we're recasting these, right, promoting health and wellness, okay, so then that means there's a greater good, but just having this as one line is really not helpful. And then the health and wellness, and then how does the brand connect with that, how we're doing that, and those trends. Experience the benefits and support of private ownership. Well, that's a founder story item, right? Or at least a new founder. Where is he or she, and what's what's motivated this movement, right? So there's no movement here. Invest in business, you're right. We don't know about that. And then the partnerships, that's always good, right? But again, we're left questioning, does that mean more business or more opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so these are good success stories. I think this is probably where the home run is. No,
Yeah, that's, I mean, the most useful thing so far on this page for sure.
right? What is
Like,
your favorite memory? Okay, so that's a big plus, and explore the path to ownership. I think this is a big story too. If they're saying here 4.15 stores per multi-unit franchisee.
That's big.
So I guess, Kelly, overall, would you say they're missing the mark here?
I mean, they have some information there, but I don't know if I was shopping, if I was online as a potential franchisee comparing 5 smoothie shops. I don't think there's anything on there that would have stood out to me.
Right. And so if we had our fictitious smoothie shop right now that we were setting up, number one, our headline about healthy transformation and financial transformation, right? Own a whatever that improves health and your whatever. Okay, so we're talking about that, and probably a founder video, why she created the brand and what's the movement, right?
100%.
And then we would avoid, I think we agree, the join a $50 billion industry and stuff like that. And I guess a big takeaway here is give the deep dive. Like, they may have been on the right path with those general summaries, but then you have to ask yourself, and why does this matter and how do we demonstrate it? Right? So if they're talking about numbers, then give, so 3 uniques. If one of them is numbers, give the numbers, and then also give me the how you help me do it, the square footage, the average rent, what are, if you're in business 50 years, what's the systems like? Are we benefit from 50 years of purchasing power and technology? So I guess the big takeaway there is just a deeper dive with all this.
I completely agree. I mean, the site didn't look bad. It just
look great,
lacking content.
And I think too, like those, I would have led where those franchisees talking about Smoothie King, that would have been in the top mast headline, either the new founder about why they bought it, or the franchisee talking about, why their children love it and how it's changed their life.
Absolutely.
And I'd rechange all the content around that inquiry of that franchisee, individual unit, multi-unit, financial numbers, how we help you succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen how much video is taking over as well. And so the fact that they had, very little is surprising for such a large brand.
What? Yeah, it is, right? Kelley, when we were at Frank Camp, back to your earlier point. So for everyone watching, our Frank Camp conference, the last one in Chicago was brand story focused, and brands presented after a day and a half of really hard, working and workshop. Um, to your point, I think the brands that struggled, they were new and it's a learning process, and credit to them because you don't improve unless you go through that process. They were focused on consumer and product service. The ones that did exceptional, I found myself hooked on information that probably had nothing to do with the franchise, but their backstory, what was motivating them, something they never thought they'd achieve in life. Like those were the things that really stuck with me in Frankham.
I agree, and I think that's the case for a lot of potential franchisees, especially if they're looking at emerging brands. Is it's one of the things I always tell people is like have as many live conversations, as many real conversations as you can, because that passion and that story is what a lot of people are buying. And if I was coming in as a franchisee shopping right now, I would want to buy a brand from someone who had that sort of passion, because if they're that passionate about the story and they're that passionate about the brand, they're probably going to put the same passion into making sure that I'm successful. If they're just numbers and they're just facts and it's just fluff, they're probably not as interested in me and my journey as, a brand where that, the journey was a big part of how they got to where they are.
Like hearing those journeys and stories were very motivating to me, to the point where there's one brand in particular. It's a client I recommended to a friend. Like I'm like, your spouse should be thinking about this because which gets to the widget, the product service I thought was phenomenal, but it was also it's the team that's behind it and having the confidence in them.
Yeah.
Let me just see here. I'd like some honest feedback. I'm not sure if I could find the website. Let's see. And I don't want to hit buttons here, so let's see if I could find it. But I think the other point when you're really diving into this, I think for everyone to understand, it's a process. We've had clients at Frank Camp where it just keeps getting better every time. And again, another story I'm thinking about, it wasn't the product or service. She was amazing, the founder. It was her emotional connection of why she's building this and had to do with family and her children. And we had another client talking about veterans and other things that many people would overlook and became so important.
Completely agree. I mean, at the end of the day, most people are buying people. They're not buying the brand. And so, I think a lot of founders, especially in the beginning, are so nervous and they go and kind of hide behind the brand and not really become the brand. Again, I relate. I was that person. But it's so important to get your story out there and find the right franchisees who resonate with what you're doing.
Okay, I am going to pull up the website for Donnie here. I did find Donnie's info on LinkedIn, and let's see if I head of franchise development, store portable storage. Let's get that. Okay, I will. Let's see. Let's get Donnie's site here. Okay. So we're looking at. So let's get moving. Best portable storage franchise to own. We are seeking franchise candidates in the U.S. Read on below for more information. What do you think, Kelley?
I mean, out of the gate, it feels like I could be on any portable storage site.
Yeah.
So nothing that really tells me, what your brand is, why you're different right out of the gate.
Well, and I think to your bigger point, Kelley, I don't really care about moving your storage right now. I'm a franchisee. I didn't wake up today, or I'm a potential franchise buyer. I didn't wake up today and say I wanted a portable storage franchise. I woke up and said, hey, I'm going to leave corporate America, or I want to put some capital in. I'm looking for a good investment. Maybe I want to think about, a franchise. And so I think the headline of let's get moving, it's again, consumer focus versus what is this franchise opportunity? All right. So he's talking about portable storage. That's good. But like, what is that transformation? Is it financial? Is it full-time? So that's really, Donnie, I would say that, like, I just want to read what I'm building and like what type of business that's going to look like. The best portable storage franchise tone. I think the mistake there is I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I want to own a portable storage franchise. And I think, Donnie, I would be on the lookout for, you're not competing with other storage franchises. You're competing with every other franchise in that estimated investment range. So that's where I would be focused on that point. Let's see. What do you think, Kelley? Again, it looks like industry data, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I think you made a really good point earlier, Charles, that it's not necessarily that competition for portable storage. It's that competition to be in an industry that I imagine is low overhead and that there aren't a lot of employees, doesn't, is a pretty turnkey operation, that is kind of plug and play. You have your trailers, you deliver them. It's not a lot of customer interface. And so I think definitely like that's where you'd want to be focused on is, this low overhead, where do we stand out in this marketplace instead of just in this industry?
Kelley, I think that's a great point, right? So your point is figure out the dynamics behind the business, and maybe your headline is about a low overhead income producing business with, a plug and play model, right? And that's not the terminology, but so I agree. That should be the goal of what you're conveying. And then a founder video of, so you're not talking about portable storage, you're talking about this model. I love the way you're categorizing it.
Freedom, maybe, here's the freedom I have. Here's the extra income that my family gets to enjoy because we have this, easy to operate, low overhead, not low income. You don't want to say that, Donnie, low overhead business. But that's a great place, I think, Charles, to your point, to tell that story right in the beginning there.
Yeah. And so I would say overall, and then still similar things here. I guess this video is about how good they are on the consumer end, right? And then what their customers have to say. So, and also too, so I would just say, not in a bad way, but look at the website as a version 0.1 and you really start over, but that's okay. Also, I would say too, just and for everyone watching, especially as we approach SEO, AI SEO, there's a lot of missed opportunities here in terms of content, in terms of other information. So definitely the site's not optimized either. Donnie, thanks. Hopefully that helps out too, Donnie. So Donnie's saying it's high income too. So you're talking high income, low overhead, low startup cost. I think there's scalability, right? You just keep adding boxes and scale up. Probably then if I were looking at a deeper dive too, Kelley, what we see on the franchise development, we'll see these types of businesses come and the FDDs are built out as if it's a brick and mortar retail location, right, and not a multi-territory, individual territory, multi-scalability, which then gets to more structural issues, I think.
Yeah, I think you got a great story to tell there, Don.
Yeah, and it's like how many people not thinking about storage may say that's a great industry I want to take a look at.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of similar like industries, whether it's dumpster rentals, we see a lot of that. Like that's a very popular industry too. And I mean, yours is cleaner than that, and you don't have to go to a dump. I mean, there's all kinds of, like, I think other people to be competing against, and not necessarily just that focus in your industry.
And then if we think about it, using Donnie's site as an example, we've seen brands, retail, others, they have websites sort of like that, maybe a little more developed, whatnot. Yeah, Donnie's saying scalable, home-based, low overhead. So that's your headline, right? And that's your story. And I would challenge too, Donnie, make sure your FDD aligns with that individual territory, multi-territory, how your item 19 is demonstrating that. But to that point, Kelley, we'll see brands that reach out to us 2 years later and say it was like a website like Donnie's, or they paid someone to run leads. It's like you spent all that money and maybe you're driving clicks to the website, but it's never going to convert.
Yeah. You got to leave people wanting more, wanting to, like, okay, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that story. How do I get involved? Versus if they, I'm also kind of a firm believer, there's sites that don't have enough, and then there's sites that have too much. If someone can completely rule out interest in your site just by being on it, then you have too much information. If you're giving them all the answers and it's enough that it dissuades them for some reason without having the opportunity to talk to them, that's also problematic.
Kelley, I'd love your perspective on, like, how you were deciphering the information and really what it's hiding. For everyone listening, if we were looking for one takeaway, right, a practical tool of something they should be doing maybe over the weekend, next week, diving into, in line with brand story, whether it's auditing certain things or developing a founder video, what would be some of your recommendations to take right now?
I do think that founder video is so important, Charles. But I think one of the most helpful things, and what really helped me turn it around and figure out my brand story, was finally realizing the question is, what problem in the world is our brand solving? And I think, Charles, to your point earlier about the brand you then went to recommend to a friend, right? This is a company that offers a service. I assume this is who you're talking about, a service that goes in and provides organizing and cleaning, and errands. But what's the real problem that they're addressing? Mental health, gender equality. I mean, there's these bigger societal issues that their brand is providing a solution to, and that is their brand story. And so, I think really kind of unpacking, like, what problem are we solving? What are we providing people that will give them a better quality of life, give them freedom? And in turn, then how do our franchisees benefit from that and get the same freedoms? That's really where to figure out, like, what's your story that you can tell. And I think that's a good place to figure out that story. And
so, and again, when we were hearing those stories, I had a ton of confidence in the founders, right? And it motivated you, like them, I want to be a part of that. So your advice would be, so first, are they even communicating that founder story, right? And what I would say is, people get stuck on what makes their business unique and what they do. And I think a lot of times we ignore the little details. I think good marketers and good communicators are looking at, well, our process involves this and we do that. Not that you're going to communicate it, but at least recognize your process. So I think to adding to what you're saying on that founder video, do a deep dive, either yourself or with your team, of, how do we help franchisees succeed? What makes us unique? And maybe that unique is us as founders, the opportunity we offer. Maybe other brands are sold out, and then really hone in on that story. So if over this weekend for your brand, Kelley, if you were working on it, you wouldn't be expecting to shoot video this weekend, what would you be doing?
I would be working toward my why. I would be finding someone that will come challenge my why, and sitting down and talking with them, whiteboarding, having someone keep pushing me every time I told them what my brand stood for. But why? Tell me more. How is that different? Because I think that whiteboarding challenge is so important.
Kelley, it is, because and then what the downside, not downside, you think you did so much and you spend 2, 3, 4 days, and then you come back the next day and you're like, it's horrible, I have to start all over. but it creates it. I guess at the end, I guess for everyone listening, your story is never going to be genuine unless you work through it and you do it honestly. And if it's not genuine, like we saw in Smoothie King, or maybe it could, because maybe it is genuine, but it was retold by a marketing department, people are going to see it as that, not a genuine story. So that's where I would focus. Donnie just asked one more question. I'll glad to answer it. What are your thoughts on sharing item 19 data via the website? I'm thinking what could be the unintended consequences. I would throw two things out there. I do think financial data is good. It needs to be complete. So I think you can include financial data, but I also think if you over rely on it, you may be, hiding weak spots and not fully developing your website or your content the right way. What are your thoughts, Kelley?
Similar, we definitely shared some, but we tried to share stuff that was actually more meaningful and universal, like percent of net margins, like the things that would apply to our best performing franchisee and worst performing franchisee. I think when you only show those top line numbers and those top performers, then you do run risk of, putting yourself in a bad situation where you're attracting maybe the wrong person for the wrong reason. And or setting some unrealistic expectations out of the gate, which even if it's legal, can really set you up for some issues going forward.
Kelley, that brings up a good point, because you're saying get into the sort of deeper dive KPIs that are story consistent, right? So it's interesting. So like in Donnie's case, maybe you're not, because who knows how big of a territory he operates in and other things he needs to align on. But also maybe it's about number of pods or whatever that are in operation, or deeper KPIs that should be in the item 19 about X number of pods and Y number of revenue. And because franchisees need to see about the scalability, and then to your point about you're giving more profitability numbers and things like that. So the answer, Donnie, I'd include it. I agree with Kelley, not only for your website, but also for developing your item 19 is the deeper dive story there, right? Because, okay, I know what your gross sales are. How many pods are you operating? How many pickup trucks do you have? Or what are those operational elements? How big the territories are and stuff like that. So I guess in the detail.
That was the best thing about the Smoothie King website, except for the videos at the end. I'm sure those were great. Was that one KPI they shared that showed how many multi-unit owners they had? For me, that's more of a metric of success than seeing the gross numbers of the top 50%.
Well, that's a great point, though, Kelley. Like, that's a really good point. And imagine if their headline on their website is, "Why do blank number of franchisees own more than one Smoothie King?"
Yes, perfect.
Right?
That was yeah.
I'd be like, okay, let me see. Why are they doing that?
Yeah.
All right, Kelley. So Smoothie King should hire us for advisory here.
I agree.
Guys, I appreciate everyone on the live stream. Kelley, it's awesome doing this together. And just be on the lookout for our next live stream. Also, check out Good Spark Franchise. We have Frank Camp conferences coming up. And we have great coaching programs and a bunch of other things. So I'll see everyone next time. Kelley, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I had fun today.